Hi, my name is Chelisea, pronouns she, her, hers, and I am the Research Program Coordinator in the Office of Research and Sponsored Programs at UW-Stout. In short, my role is to support student research at Stout by coordinating a grant program that provides money to students to cover costs of completing their research, scholarly, or artistic projects, attending conferences to share their results, and publishing their work. Our office also supports students by taking them to research events across the state and the country and organizing Research Day right here on campus. At the end of these slides, I'll provide our office location, SharePoint page, and my direct contact information if you have any questions about these other services that our office provides to students. As for this session, our focus will be on how to effectively present a research poster. This session is for any student who is presenting a poster at an upcoming research conference or event. Before I start, I want to emphasize that our focus in this session is preparing to present a poster at a conference or event that is multidisciplinary or open to the general public. The reason this is important is because it affects how detailed you are in your initial remarks, as opposed to what you might be able to say at a disciplinary conference or event. Second, we really want to emphasize that your faculty mentor or instructor is your ultimate guide when it comes to presenting a poster at a conference. That is because research posters and events do vary among disciplines, so they will know better than our office what is typical for your field of study. And they have likely worked with you on your project, so they know better than anyone what the most important findings are and their relevance, and can guide you on how to best tell your story. In short, they have the final word. Okay, so the first thing we want you to consider is why you are presenting a research poster. What are you trying to accomplish by presenting it? Of course, it's about sharing your methods and your findings broadly so that others can learn about your work and perhaps build on it. But presenting a poster offers other important opportunities. For instance, it's a chance to, in effect, market yourself as a researcher, scholar, or artist, as well as your team, and market the project itself. That's important if you're trying to find funding or other support for the project. And it's important if you want to leverage this work to help you move on to other research projects, get a job, or get into grad school. Finally, because these conferences are critical places to network, I want you to think of your poster presentation as a way to start conversations that lead to important connections. Okay, with that, let's get into it. First, if you haven't been to a research conference, you might be wondering where you'll be, how it'll be set up. So here's a photo from Research Day at UW-Stout in the upper right-hand corner, and the Spark Symposium held at UW-La Crosse last year in the left-hand side. So typically, you'll be in a large conference hall with posters set up in rows. There will be conference attendees who walk by and some who stop to talk. But how do you get those people to stop and talk to you? And then what do you actually say? So we'll have to divided what you do and say into three parts: the hook, the gist, and the closer. So let's go through each of those. First of all, be welcoming. Don't just stand back and wait for someone to approach you. Look people in the eye as they walk by, smile, use open posture that lets them know that you want to talk to people. Then, of course, you should say something. You could keep it simple by asking, "Can I tell you about my research?" Or, "Could I have a few minutes of your time to tell you about my project?" Or you could be a bit more creative by sharing a surprising or interesting statistic or fact related to the research, or telling a brief personal story that relates to the project. Any of that works to hook someone in, to capture their attention. So let me give you an example for when I was an undergraduate researcher. My research topic was measuring terrestrial gastropod richness of the Niagara Escarpment. Okay, so how could I hook someone into talking with me about this topic? I could say, "Did you know that our region's land snails are among the most poorly understood in the eastern United States? We work to correct that. Can I tell you how?" So in that example, I used a statistic. I also localized the topic so people knew I was talking about snails in this area. And I made sure that they understood that terrestrial gastropods are just snails that live on the land. So again, going back to my original point of in the video is that you are assuming that you are at a conference where people might not know anything about your area of study. So it was important that I define what terrestrial gastropods are. I could have also said, perhaps using a personal story, imagine picking through dirt and leaves all summer to look for snails 2 to 3 millimeters long and then finding a species thought to be extinct since the Ice Age. I'd love to tell you about what else we found. So in this example, I use a story and something interesting and perhaps shocking to capture their attention. In short, though, just be friendly and also share your passion about your topic. That's what's important at this point. So once you pull them in with that opener, make sure to introduce yourself and orient them. What I mean by that is share your name, your university, and your field of study, because there are likely other presenters right next to you talking about all sorts of different topics. And it helps the attendee if you orient them by saying what field of study the poster is addressing. If it's a multidisciplinary conference, it could be just your program or major. If it's a disciplinary conference, it could be your subfield of study. Next, move on to share the gist of your project. In other words, take a couple minutes to summarize your research, in essence, share the headlines of your project. So to give you some more specific items, think about sharing the 2 or 3 most important points about your project, maximum 4. I know that 2 or 3 key points doesn't seem like much, but keep in mind that the attendee will not likely remember much more than that. So you have to watch for that glazed over look if you start sharing too much information. So to decide what to share, think about what would be the most thought-provoking, the most relevant, or the most memorable to the audience of this conference. Consider sharing your problem, your high-level methods, and the major themes of your results. Make sure to explain why the findings are important. Once you've summarized the results, make sure to also highlight the conclusions of the project and share where that research might go next in the future. The key thing to remember here is that people will have a wide range of understanding of your subject. So that's why it's important to keep it simple in these first couple minutes. You will have an opportunity to invite questions next, and that's where you potentially could get into more detail. So finally, you move to the closer, and this is where you invite questions. You could say, what questions do you have? What interests you most about the project? What could I clarify for you? And at this point, it might be that you find somebody has quite a bit of information or knowledge about your topic, and they really want to get into the details and dig down into your findings. And this is often where you really get into some very interesting conversations. Or you might find that that person doesn't have any questions and they're ready to move on, which is fine. Once that person is ready to move on, make sure you thank them for their time. You could say, thanks so much for stopping by my poster. I really enjoyed speaking with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. At this point, it's also appropriate, if you've had a really good discussion, to invite some sort of follow-up, either by offering your contact information or asking for theirs. So if you have a business card, you might offer it. If you don't have one, if you've shared your contact information on the poster or used a QR code, you might invite them to scan the QR code or write down your email to continue the conversation. If you don't have those, you could also ask if they have a business card or might share their contact information. As far as what you might say, you could simply say, I'd love to continue this conversation. Do you have a business card that I could take? Or here's my email if you'd like to reach out after the conference. This is a very key point, and make sure you don't miss this part, precisely because these conferences are meant to be great networking opportunities, and some really important outputs of them happen after the conference when you get back into contact with these people. Okay, now that we've covered the three parts of what to say and do to present your poster, I want to provide some steps to actually craft that conversation. Some students can really think on their feet and don't have to do that much preparation, but many actually would benefit by preparing their thoughts and their comments beforehand, especially because sometimes, when you get to these conferences, there's a lot of people and you might get a little bit nervous. And also because your project is often quite large. There's a lot to say. So you have to think ahead of time about what you want to emphasize, what you want to share to summarize the project. So we recommend that you first draft your script. Just type it out or write it out. When you do that, make sure, again, that you're using simple language and avoiding jargon, which are just terms specific to your field of study, and also try to avoid acronyms unless it's absolutely necessary. If you do have to use them, just make sure that you explain them the first time that you mention them. As you're writing your script, remember you're telling a story, the story of your project. So make sure that your script emphasizes what you would want the attendee to remember about your project. Next, read that script out loud and time it. It's likely going to be longer than you expected. So if it is, go back and look at what you could cut out to get it back down to 2 or 3 minutes. It's helpful to remember those 2 or 3 key points, and that helps you to decide what should stay and what could go. Once you get the script down to 2 or 3 minutes and you're pretty happy with it, now it's time to practice with a friend, a roommate, or even me. Ideally, find somebody who is not in your same major or class so that they don't have any background knowledge of the project. That's helpful because then they can provide incredibly helpful and honest feedback about what would be unclear to someone who hasn't been studying your topic for months at a time. Finally, make your tweaks to the script and practice it until you feel comfortable. To summarize the most important takeaways from this session, remember that you're likely going to be talking to someone with no specialized knowledge of your topic, so keep your language simple at first. Next, remember that you're telling a story, so be sure to connect all the dots. And finally, if you can, leave yourself enough time to practice so that when you get to the event, those words are on the tip of your tongue and your nerves are less likely to affect you. So thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or our office by emailing me at ceac@uwstout.edu or our office at rs@uwstout.edu. You also could call me at 715-232-5421, or you could stop by in person at our office, which is in the Swanson Library, room 202. We also encourage you to find us on SharePoint at the short URL you see on the slide, or to follow us on Instagram because we often are posting about the many different opportunities that student researchers, scholars, and artists have at UW-Stout. Thank you.